Okay, so moving on, the other team that's at 8.5 wins is NC State.
Yeah.
Let's see, they bring back Devin Leary, kind of the same story here, another great quarterback, and I think
Right.
even more of a NFL profile, like Heisman contender, that type of thing, stands out a little more just physical tools wise. Um, the receivers should be good. The offensive line's a bit of a question mark. Their defense was really good last year, and I expect that to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the one thing I don't like about NC State is it seems like Dave Doran, their head coach, he's he's almost the anti analytics guy. Um, Last year they ran way too often, despite having Devin Leary on their team.
Yeah.
They punted all the time in opponent territory. I think I saw somewhere where they like if you look at what the statistics models say, like when you should punt, when you should not, like they punted. They were like the worst team in the country at that decision making. But he's a good coach. Like I can admit that as someone who likes analytics. Dave Dorn seems like he is doing a good job at NC State. Gets a lot out of his team.
Right.
When you have a really good quarterback and a really good defense, you can go a pretty long way.
Agreed. Okay, so they're replacing Ike Ekwonu, right? I mean,
Yes.
famously the top 10 overall draft pick, right? The
Right.
tackle, the left tackle. That's hard. At NC State, you don't just have guys walking around that can replace that.
Right.
So in that way, it's a little bit of a cause for concern. I do have the over here at 8.5. I
Mm-hmm.
do think they'll have a really good year. I'm a believer in Devin Leary. The defense is actually really good, sneaky good. We don't really talk about how good their defense was last year. They only averaged 19.7 a game, second in
Mm-hmm.
the ACC to Clemson, right? So they had a really good defense and they had a good quarterback. Their offense wasn't just explosive. They weren't like you mentioned. They made like there was a lot of weird kind of things that they did. And I mean, yeah, as fans, you can get a little upset about it. But I think maybe like where they were coming from is like let's run the ball behind our all Mr. Everything left tackle and then play some really good defense and not turn the ball over. So and they did like it was a good like it really was a good strategy. They won games.
Yeah.
I think they'll do that again this year. Yeah, like I said, I
Mm-hmm.
like the over. Feel fairly confident in it. I would imagine you do as well based off of your comments so far?
Yes. So this was they were one of our darlings last year, weren't they?
They were. They were a
Yeah.
darling. Yeah.
And I feel like they still might be for me this year.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
I think if this line was 9.5, I would really have to think about it.
Okay. Yeah.
But at 8.5, I'm taking the over. And I feel like NC State fans are a little bit like Georgia fans the last couple decades, as far as like a couple notches lower on the success scale, but it's like always expecting the other shoe to drop. Like
Okay.
we are going to get screwed no matter what happens. Like
Yeah.
we we're going to lose two games we're supposed to win. Just that mentality. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. You're a
I do.
Georgia
Oh
fan.
yeah. I
Yeah,
know.
and I
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of the mentality NC State fans have a little bit. And they're
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily wrong. Like it does feel like just historically like they've always been better than the results have shown.
Right.
And I think last year it finally started to shift. And even last year, like you could argue they should have had a better record than they did. They lost to Mississippi State. Like there was
Oh.
like
Oh.
it's just some
I forgot about that one.
it's just so NC State of them to do some of those things. But to me, I'm on the over. Like this is a good team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
last year they went 9-3, and it felt like they should have been a 10-win team last year, if not 11. So I'm going to go on the over again. Pretty confident in this one. Easily my most confident pick so far.
There you go. I like the agreement. I'm flashing back to that game last year against
Yes.
Mississippi State. Infuriating. Absolutely infuriating.
Yeah.
Like NC State was all the signs pointed to them being the better team there. And like
They
they were,
were.
but somehow that day they were not. And
Yeah.
it was just like, how is this possible? Like I truly felt that I was smarter than everyone else. Like, I know it. NC State is good. Mississippi State is overrated, and we all knew it. And somehow it didn't like it played out that way over the course of a season, right? But
Yeah.
that day it didn't work out. And that one, like losses like that, when you're right, you really feel like you've got it right. You
Yeah.
pick this game appropriately and it goes the other way.
Mhm.
it just leaves just a bad taste in your mouth, and I still remember it. So yeah, no. That being said, I'm borderline darling with them again. They're not a darling. I want to point that out. NC
Okay.
State not a darling this year, but they are just not far from it. Like they're just one
Mhm.
tier below darling level. A fairly confident over for me as well. I think we both feel pretty good about NC State, even though they are replacing Ike Quana.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that game was it's not even like it was super fluky with like 5 turnovers or anything like that. It was just a case of one team brought their A game, the other team brought their C game on the same day, and it just
Yeah.
that happens sometimes in college football, and that's why we play the games. Yeah, insert your
Have it-
favorite. Um,
Mike Leach.
Yeah.
It just that's what happens when you play Mike Leach. That's
yeah,
the
true.
truth. Like
That's
it's
facts.
that's just how that goes. Yeah.
Maybe the lesson is never bet on Mississippi State games.
Correct. It's a correct answer.